Christianity functions by the law of the spirit and life, the law of spirit and life, while paganism or Old Testament or paganism functions by the law of sin and death, the law of spirit and life, and the law of sin and death. Now, the first passage that I would like you to examine is in John chapter 1, verse 16 to 17. In John chapter 1, verse 16 to 17, the Bible says, "And of his God, of God's fullness, we have all received of God's fullness. All have received something." So that is to buttress the message that I preached yesterday, that we don't have supermen in Christianity. We shouldn't have some hierarchy of Christians, that the pastors are better than members, or the apostles are better, or some specially anointed people in Christianity have privileges. No, we don't have that. That is not a Christian practice. In Christianity, everybody has got something to offer. Nobody is worse than any other person. Nobody is inferior to another person. All of us have been graced. So it says here that, "And of his fullness, we all have received." You have received something that I need, and I have something that you need as well. So that is why we are a body, to edify each other, to be a blessing to one another. "And of his fullness we have all received, and grace for grace." So we all are full of grace. We already have the grace of God. You don't need a man to give you grace. You don't need anybody to give you handkerchief or to give you oil or to lay hands on you. We have the grace of God. Then it goes on to say in verse 17, John chapter 1, verse 17, it says, "The law was given through Moses." The law was given through Moses. Now remember that again, law was given through Moses. So how does that law function? What does the word law mean? Whenever you hear the word law, it functions by the law of sin and death. Law functions by the law of sin and death. So whenever you hear about law, that Moses brought the law, that law was given through Moses, he's talking about the law of sin and death. 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 Anytime we emphasize law, we are emphasizing sin and we are emphasizing death. Anytime we emphasize sin, we are actually pointing to death as well. So, but if you go to my continent today, the church in my continent and in my country is now full of this doctrine. It's like all this doctrine is overwhelming in the church in Africa. And the doctrine is the fact that all pastors, most pastors emphasize the doctrine or the law of sin and death.